Why the cross? Why the cross? We were sitting in front of a campfire. There were a few of us. We're all related, family members, enjoying a warm fire on a warm summer night on an evening by the lake. It's the kind of night that artists write songs about. And my relative repeated the question in the form of a statement. I just can't understand why Jesus had to die on a cross. It's a great question. We are on Good Friday. We're confronted with precisely this question. Why the cross? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Have you ever wondered about that yourself? If I were to ask you, why the cross? What would you say? In many ways, it's a great question because the cross doesn't make sense. If I were to create my own religion, the cross would certainly not have featured prominently into it. I would never have designed it in this way, that God became man and that man was crucified on a cross. Christianity is singularly unique in all the major religions of the world, in that its central focus is the suffering and degradation of its God, our God. It certainly doesn't make any sense from a marketing perspective. Marketers want a logo that expresses a positive association of their brand. Take, for example, the Amazon smile, right? That feeling you get when you come home from work to discover a freshly delivered Amazon package on your front doorstep. How about the Nike swoosh? That sound that you hear, that you feel as you pass a competitor on the racetrack or the soccer field is perfect symbol, logo for a running shoe company. Or one of my personal favorites, McDonald's Golden Arches. They get me salivating the moment I see them. Even that little M looks like delicious golden French fries. The cross is not a good logo from a marketing standpoint. Why? Because it's a symbol of death. Imagine that marketing meeting that the heads of the Christian faith get together and they think, okay, what do we want to associate with our company, with our organization? Death. That's a good one. The problem for us today, as we reflect on why the cross, is that the cross has become so familiar to us. To so many of us, we've seen it a million times before. We see it on the walls of schoolrooms or our homes and in church. We see it. But let's step back and reflect a moment on the cross, the central symbol of our faith, and think about it. The cross is a punishment of diabolical cruelty, so terrible that it could only be conceived in the mind of a man. It was meant to make a show of its victim. It was gruesome, humiliating, a public show. It was reserved for the worst criminals and the most egregious offenses. It was an example to all of those who opposed imperial Roman power. It was a form of torture. The word excruciating comes from the word crucifixion. The victim would slowly die, often after days, suffocating as they hung on the cross. Now imagine for a moment, let's take a modern sort of analogy. It's not a perfect analogy. But imagine that every year on Good Friday, instead of Christians coming forward to venerate a cross, they venerated an electric chair. It's kind of a bizarre image, right? An image of capital punishment, execution. And every year on this day, Christians all around the world gather together to venerate an instrument far more horrific than an electric chair. And so when my relative asks me, why the cross? It's a great question. And it's more than just a question about the symbol that we choose. It's a question about the very logic of the faith in which we believe. Why, at the heart of this global religious faith, is a symbol of death, oppression, torture, and defeat. Well, if you'll permit me, I will offer a few of my own reflections. I believe that the cross touches on every element and dimension of our human experience and illuminates it. Why the cross? Well, the cross redefines the value of human life. We live in an age of amazing scientific discoveries that have unveiled the reality that the cosmos are far greater and bigger than we could ever even comprehend. And we find that in our place within the cosmos, we feel perhaps at times insignificant. We live in a world where ideologies and philosophies undermine the value and the dignity of the human person. We live in a culture in the West that sometimes encourages things like assisted suicide, abortion in our own culture, that undermine the intrinsic value of human life, but isn't the value of something determined precisely by what somebody is willing to pay for it? Well, God is willing to pay the price of what is most precious to him. He's willing to exchange the life of his only begotten Son for the human person, for you and for I. The cross redefines the value of human life and attributes to it an infinite value. And so on the days where you might feel insignificant and worthless, like your life is meaningless, I want you to look to the cross and gaze upon Jesus who hung there. And I want you to hear him say that you are worthy. You're worth dying for. You are of infinite value because I paid for your life with mine. The cross redefines the value of human life. Why the cross? Well, the cross redefines the meaning of power. Rome had conquered the entire known world. Its legions stood at the corners of the known world, patrolling and manifesting Roman imperial power, their capacity to conquer their enemies and defeat them. And yet, the cross itself conquered the Roman Empire. Within 300 years, the entire Roman world had become Christian. See, the cross redefines the power structures of the world. It shows us that the power of this world is fleeting and empty and passing away. That true power lies not in politics or military might. It's not in control or coercion. It's not through shows of strength or imposing our will upon other people or convincing them to do what we want them to do. That true power lies in humility, in obedience, in service, and surrender. Just as Jesus was obedient to his Father, even unto death. So whenever you feel weak, like you've come to the limits of your strength, like you've got nothing left to give. I want you to remember the cross, and that is precisely when you feel weak, then you are strong. I want you to draw close to the cross and let it fill you with the same power that conquered even death itself. The cross redefines the meaning of power. Why the cross? Well, it redefines the meaning of human suffering. We watch the news, we see poverty, war, violence, mindless human suffering, mass shootings. We've experienced here in Nova Scotia. See it every time we turn on the news, and the great and unanswered philosophical question of human suffering that no human wisdom in history has ever solved. The meaning of human suffering. But the answer to the question of human suffering is Jesus on the cross. See, we don't worship a God who is distant and separate from the daily trials and difficulties and sufferings of human life. We have a God who has entered into time and space, who's embraced our human suffering and joined it to himself, and transformed it into the very means by which we are saved. We worship a God who knows what it means to suffer. So it means that whenever you suffer injustice or violence, whenever you fall sick or you lose somebody close to you and you experience the mystery of human suffering, it means that you can bring your suffering to the cross, and it takes on a new significance, because in your suffering, there is Christ. In your suffering, joined to the cross, has an eternal significance because it's contributing to the salvation of the world. The cross redefines the meaning of human suffering. Why the cross? Well, the cross redefines the meaning of true love. We live in a world which primarily defines love as romantic feelings and expressions. It's formed by the media we watch. We hear things like, love means never having to say you're sorry. Or one of my favorites from Jerry Maguire, you complete me. You had me at hello. To me, you are perfect. I think I'd miss you even if we'd never met. It tells us that love is romance, presented as a feeling, something kind of intangible about it. But the cross redefines the meaning of love. It shows that true love is concrete. That true love means self-sacrifice. It means laying down one's life for the sake of the other. As Jesus, hanging on the cross, he gave the very last of what he had to give out of love for you and I. So the next time you worry about whether or not you'll find someone, or whether or not you'll fall in love, or the next time when you feel alone, or perhaps yourself feel unlovable, I want you to look at the cross and see what Jesus is willing to do to prove his undying love for you. The cross redefines the meaning of love. Why the cross? Well, the cross redefines man's relationship with God. Because the history of religion has been man's search for God. The expressions of his natural desire, crying out to God, seeking him, searching for him. But only in Christianity does God go searching for man. The cross redefines our relationship with God because man is no longer the primary actor in this great drama. It is God himself who initiates, who reaches into time and history to reveal himself to the human heart. It is God who shows through the cross the extent to which he is willing to go in search of the heart of man. It means that no matter where you might find yourself today, no matter how difficult life, no matter how deep your struggles, no matter how lost you might feel that you are, that we have a God who will go to the ends of the earth and will follow you even into death. The cross redefines man's relationship with God. Why the cross? There's a few thoughts. Maybe a better question is, why not the cross? I can't imagine a symbol more fitting for so glorious a faith as a symbol of death that has been transformed into a symbol of victory. On this day, we celebrate this day on which death was transformed from the inside out. A sign of defeat transfigured into a sign of victory, that we who have faith in Jesus Christ have already overcome all that seeks to oppress the human spirit. Sin and death in all of its various manifestations. And in a little while, we're going to come forward and we're going to venerate so great a symbol. We'll come forward and venerate the cross here tonight, this afternoon, or online. If you're watching, you can do it from home. And as you approach the cross, invite it to speak. Invite Jesus to speak the truth into every dimension of your life. See in it the sign of your own victory in your own life and everything that stands against you. Seek in it the answers to the secret questions of your heart, and see and listen as Jesus speaks from the cross. St. Paul says the cross is the power and wisdom of God. Christ crucified. So behold the wood of the cross, on which hung the salvation of the world.